The Nintendo Entertainment System, a cornerstone of gaming history. For many, it brings back memories of simpler times, of endless hours spent trying to beat that one impossible level. But not every game was just innocent fun. Some NES titles stirred up more than just childhood nostalgia. They ignited controversy. Today we're going to take a deep dive into the most controversial NES games ever released. Starting off our list is Taboo: The Sixth Sense, a game that promised to tell your fortune. Developed by Rare and released in 1989, Taboo was less of a traditional game and more of a virtual tarot card reading. The game's mystical theme and predictions, which sometimes included unsettling messages, led to it being viewed with suspicion by parents and conservative groups. Many feared it was introducing children to occult practices. Despite its controversial nature, Taboo: The Sixth Sense captivated a niche audience intrigued by its unique premise. The game utilized a virtual tarot deck and offered cryptic fortunes, which often spurred curiosity and superstition among its players. Rare's dedication to depart from conventional gameplay was both bold and innovative, as it pushed the boundaries of what video games could represent. However, this audacity also placed Taboo at the center of debates about media influence and the appropriateness of certain themes for younger audiences. The game's eerie atmosphere, coupled with the novelty of an interactive fortune-telling experience, ensured that it remained a memorable, albeit divisive, title in the late 1980s gaming landscape. Chiller is another game that stirred up quite a bit of controversy. Originally an arcade shooter, it was ported to the NES in 1990, but what set Chiller apart was its graphic and gory content. Players were tasked with shooting at various scenes of torture and dismemberment, something that was unheard of for the NES's typical family-friendly lineup. The game was heavily criticized for its violent imagery and was banned in several countries. Despite its notorious reputation, Chiller garnered a cult following due to its shocking and boundary-pushing content. The game's stark departure from the NES's generally wholesome image was both a point of fascination and contention. It features macabre environments where players could shoot at helpless victims and scenes of torture chambers and haunted houses. A stark contrast to the lighthearted fare typically seen on the platform. The game's existence sparked heated discussions about censorship, the impact of violent media on youth, and the responsibilities of game developers. Its infamy was further amplified by its ban in several countries, cementing Chiller as a provocative piece of gaming history that challenged societal norms and the limits of acceptability in video games. Before we move on, I want to know your thoughts. Do you have any of these games? Have you heard of these games? I'm sure you've heard of a few of them. Did you know they were controversial? Sound off in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Now back to our list. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was controversial primarily due to its bewildering gameplay mechanics and perceived lack of quality. Released in 1989, it promised an engaging experience based on the classic novel, but delivered something far less coherent. The game's primary controversy stemmed from its confusing design. Players were expected to alternate between the personas of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but the transition between these characters was erratic and poorly explained. This led to a disjointed gameplay experience that left many players frustrated and perplexed. The unclear objectives and random enemy behavior only added to the confusion, making it difficult for players to progress or understand the game's narrative. As a result, many felt that the game was misleading in its promises and ultimately unplayable. Further fueling the controversy was the widespread belief that the game was a blatant cash grab. Critics argued that it was rushed to market without sufficient testing or quality control, leading to numerous technical issues such as glitches, unfair difficulty spikes, and poor audio-visual quality. The game's graphics and sound were subpar even by the standards of the late 1980s, and the lack of polish was evident throughout the entire experience. Many parents, feeling deceived by what they perceived as a scam, demanded refunds. The negative reception was not just limited to consumers, it also drew the ire of gaming critics who lambasted it for its lack of creativity, coherence, and playability. The combination of technical failures and deceptive marketings made Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde a symbol of what was wrong in the gaming industry at the time, sparking debates about consumer rights and the responsibility of game developers and publishers. Action 52 is a compilation of 52 games released in 1991. Marketed with the slogan, 52 games in one cartridge. It sounded like a great deal. However, the reality was far from it. The games were buggy, unfinished, and often unplayable. The controversy stemmed from what many saw as false advertising and exploitation of consumers. Action 52 became a symbol of greed and lack of quality control in the gaming industry. The compilation's development was rushed with a mere 3 months dedicated to creating all 52 games, resulting in numerous glitches and crashes. Among these games, titles like Cheetah Men stood out not for their quality, but for their laughable attempts at creating a new franchise, which failed spectacularly. The high price tag of $199 exacerbated consumer dissatisfaction, as buyers felt they had been grossly overcharged for what was essentially a collection of broken, substandard games. This infamous release is often cited in discussions about the worst video games in history, serving as a cautionary tale of overpromising and under-delivering in the gaming market. The legacy of Action 52 extends beyond its immediate failure, as it has since become a cult classic and a subject of interest among retro gaming enthusiasts. Last but not least, we have Bionic Commando, and I know you're probably thinking, Bionic Commando, what are you talking about? Well, Bionic Commando was controversial primarily due to its original Japanese version titled Top Secret: Hitler's Resurrection, which featured explicit Nazi imagery and references to Adolf Hitler. The game included swastikas and other Nazi symbols, and the final boss was a resurrected Hitler, which sparked significant backlash given the sensitivity surrounding World War II and the Holocaust. To avoid offending international audiences, Capcom made extensive changes for the Western release, removing swastikas and renaming Hitler to Master Z, and altering the enemy faction's identity from neo-Nazis to a fictional group called the Bads. These alterations underscored the delicate balance between creative content and cultural sensitivity, illustrating the challenges of localizing games with controversial historical themes. Despite the extensive changes made for the Western release, Bionic Commando still faced scrutiny for its connections to its original content. However, these modifications allowed the game to reach a broader audience and avoid potential bans in sensitive markets. The Western version, released in 1988, was well received for its innovative gameplay mechanics, particularly the protagonist's use of a bionic arm for swinging across gaps, which added a unique twist to the platforming genre. This feature, combined with its challenging levels and engaging storyline, helped Bionic Commando gain a dedicated fanbase. The controversy surrounding its original content, coupled with the successful adaptation for international markets, highlights the complexities developers face when dealing with sensitive historical material. It also emphasizes the impact of cultural considerations on the localization process, which can significantly alter a game's narrative and reception across different regions. The NES era was a formative time for the gaming industry, full of innovation and creativity. The introduction of iconic franchises like Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, and Metroid set new standards for gameplay, narrative, and design. However, this period also had its fair share of controversies, which continued into the Super Nintendo era. Issues such as censorship, violent content, and the representation of gender and race in games spark heated debates. For instance, the American version of many games underwent significant alterations to meet Nintendo of America's strict content guidelines, which sometimes led to the removal or modification of religious symbols, graphic violence, and sexual content. As gaming continues to evolve, the lessons learned from these controversial titles remain relevant. Reflecting on the NES era, it becomes clear that the dialogue between developers, players, and regulators is crucial in shaping a responsible and innovative future for gaming. What are your thoughts on these games? Were they a product of their time, or did they push the boundaries too far? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked this video, please leave a like, and if you didn't, that other button seems to work pretty well too. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing for a plethora of gaming related content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.